Hi, I'm Esty. Welcome to this Realized Grace study on Celtic Christianity. This is session 4 in our study, and today I'd like to introduce you to another figure whose influence on the Celtic Christian tradition is enormous. It's a woman. Her name is Saint Brigid of Kildare. Unlike Saint Patrick, who was actually born in Roman Britain, Brigid was born in the Celtic lands in Ireland around the year 450 CE. While we don't have any writings from Brigid herself like we do from Patrick, from Pelagius, what we do have about Brigid are stories. Celtic Christianity is full of stories about Saint Brigid, and the story of her birth is one of the best. Brigid is said to have been born at sunrise on the threshold of her home. Her mother gave birth with 1 foot inside of the house and 1 foot outside, in that liminal hour between night and day, a time governed neither by sun or moon, but by both lights, the twilights. Brigid was born at a threshold, and she is a saint for all who find themselves in threshold moments, those times when one season has ended and the next season has not yet begun. In the Celtic world, Brigid is a guide and a companion to those who find themselves standing in between. It's fitting that Brigid's feast day is February 1st, the halfway point between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. February 1st is also a Gaelic festival called Imbolc, a time that celebrates the stirring of new life beneath the earth. It's a seasonal threshold, a time of turning toward more and more light in the world. During this time of year, when the sacred is quietly preparing to emerge, we remember Brigid, one who helps us watch and wait for what is being born. Stories of Brigid speak of her lavish generosity and hospitality. As a girl, she was said to give with abundance to anyone who was in need, emptying her family's stores of milk or butter or cheese. Whatever you need, if you come to my house, I'm going to give it to you. In one famous tale, when a beggar came to the door, Brigid found no food to offer him. So instead, she gave away her father's jeweled sword, encouraging the man to take this sword and trade it for food for his family. Brigid's father was not happy about this, and he complained to the king that Brigid does things without asking permission. The story shows that in the hands of Brigid, a weapon of war is transformed into something life-giving. As she grew older, Brigid is said to have become very beautiful, and everyone wanted to marry her. Her father planned to marry her off to a nobleman, but Brigid felt called to serve God instead. And so the story is that in order to stop her marriage from happening, Brigid caused one of her eyeballs to burst so that she wouldn't be beautiful anymore. It worked. No one wanted to marry her. Her father said, "Okay, fine, Brigid, you can be a nun instead." And then miraculously, her eyeball grew back. Kind of a funny story there about Saint Brigid. Later, Brigid felt called to establish a monastery. She went to the king of Leinster and asked for land to build a holy space. The king refused, and Brigid persisted. Finally, out of exasperation, she wore him down. The king told Brigid, "Lay down your cloak, and I will give you as much land as it covers." The story is that Brigid placed her cloak on the ground, and she and her friends each grabbed a corner of the cloak. They ran in 4 directions, and the cloak grew and grew until it covered 5,000 acres, land known as the Curragh Plains. In this place, Brigid founded a double monastery for men and women centered at Kildare, and she was named Bishop of Kildare. Can you imagine that? A woman bishop in the year 500? Later accounts tried to explain this contradiction of a woman being bishop away. We can't have women bishops. We've got to explain this away. So later church accounts claimed that the bishop who ordained Brigid accidentally read from the wrong service. Hers was like an accidental consecration as bishop. Very interestingly, though, there are church records from a synod in the year 1152 that revoked Brigid's title of bishop. So in 1152, some church meeting voted to revoke her title as bishop, which actually proves that she held the title of bishop. Brigid's story reflects the unique openness of the Celtic Church to women's leadership and their belief that women and men share equal dignity before God. Again, they were okay with a woman bishop in the year 500. My favorite story about Saint Brigid is a story that places her at the birth of Christ. Yes, Brigid, who lived in 5th century Ireland, is said to have been a midwife at the birth of Christ. This is not a historical claim, but a spiritual one. So to hear this story, you have to suspend your literal, rational brain for a moment. The story goes that a weary man and woman came to the door of an inn, and Brigid was there. She had no room for them, but she offered them her last cup of water and her remaining loaf of bread. After they ate and drank, they left, and Brigid noticed that the cup and the bread had been miraculously replenished. Looking out, she saw a great light from the stable. She ran outside and found the woman, Mary, in labor. Brigid knelt down and served as midwife for the birth of the child. In the Celtic Christian imagination, this story makes perfect sense. Not because Brigid somehow traveled through time, but because their understanding is that sacred time is always now. Christ is always being born in hearts, in homes, in the world. Brigid is the midwife of the Christ child, not in the literal sense that she transcended time, but in the imaginative sense of being a midwife of the sacred. And this is something we can all follow Brigid's example in. We are also called to be midwives of the sacred, to bring about what God is trying to birth in the world. Our work as Christians is not to produce God's intended outcomes, not to make God's creation with our own energy. That's God's work to do. Instead, our role is to be alert to where the sacred is trying to emerge among us, to be on the lookout for what God is doing in the world to bring healing and wholeness and to assist with this emergence. There's a painting in the National Galleries of Scotland titled Saint Brigid by the artist John Duncan. This painting shows Brigid being carried by angels to Bethlehem for the birth of the Christ child. Brigid becomes a bridge, a connection between heaven and earth, as she helps midwife the birth of God, as she assists begins with the sacred's emergence into the world. So, what does Saint Brigid mean for us today? Brigid stands at the threshold. There are times when we stand in similar places, seasons of transition in our own lives, when a new calling is stirring, when an old chapter has ended, when you might not yet see clearly what is ahead, but you know that you cannot go back. If you find yourself in this kind of place, Brigid is your saint. She is your guide. She teaches us to give of ourselves without counting the cost, to stand firm when our calling is questioned, to hold space for the sacred to be born. Brigid reminds us that what feels like a small act of hospitality or courage might be the very thing that allows light, God's light, to enter into the world. To follow in the way of Brigid is to be a midwife of the sacred. It is to tend the threshold with courage and compassion, knowing that dawn is always coming. So in reflection, I invite you to ask yourself, where in your life are you standing on a threshold? What is God seeking to birth in or around you? And how can you help become a midwife of the sacred? How can you pay attention to what God is trying to bear in this world and usher it in? We give thanks for the stories of Saint Brigid. May we go forth with her story as our guide. Thank you for joining me for this session on Celtic Christianity and Saint Brigid. I hope that when this video ends, you'll take a little bit of time in reflection. You can go to my website and download a discussion guide, realizegrace.com. The guide is designed to be used with a small group of people that you can have conversation with, that you can talk about what God is doing in your life and how you are feeling called to be a vessel of God's grace to the world. May you continue to realize grace.